do I?
Like playing music.
Hang on, how do I flip it this way?
Pretty live.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you try playing music or something to make sure?
What? Oh, yeah? Hey, Lucas. No, not lefty. Not lefty. Probably from the camera angle. Hey, JP, can you hear me okay? Sorry? Okay. Loud and clear, awesome. My husband said there might be a little delay. He said loud and clear, awesome. We'll wait a few minutes, see if more people jump on, and then we'll get started. I'm really excited. How do I, because I'm not getting the text like right to my watch. Is that because it's live on my phone? So my old boss is on here. He's from the Northeastern New York section, and he's talking about our Playground Golf Foundation. That's an awesome foundation where we help underprivileged kids, and we go teach in schools. It's really fun with snag equipment and short golf equipment. Thanks for the love, Lucas. Hey Bill, hey Artie. I met you guys on Sunday during the hangout. So James actually already sent me a couple questions that I can answer just as we wait until we get started. So the first question was, so JP and I were actually talking about this earlier. I think yoga, the best thing for hip rotation and just helping to get a little bit more flexible would be yoga. I'll show a couple exercises first. I mean, my favorite would probably be child's pose. Just kind of open down here. Reaching out, holding that position also helps kind of with your shoulders and through the upper body. You can also just stand one foot and kind of do some hip openers like this, and then also rotate in and do the other way too. Awesome. New Jersey just announced courses will be open on Saturday. That's great. I know I'm itching to play. I don't know about you guys. Artie, that's a big stretch for a 73-year-old. But don't you want to hold up for 18 holes? I don't know about you. So any stretches for 73-year-old? Am I back on? Of course, but if you kill me before I start where I am, then. Artie, you're funny. Actually, there is another yoga one that will help. There was a question earlier about strengthening lower back. That was the question that Eugene asked me. So I don't know if you guys have seen cat and cow, but that's a really popular and common yoga pose. So cat and cow, Artie, I think you can do this one. You start neutral spine and kind of go up and then back. Up, back. That's a really good one. And I'm pretty sure that you can do this one, that hip opener one. The other questions that James sent me was just some grip techniques, so I'll definitely get into that. And then also lower back, kind of just what I showed. Usually with lower back, it's a weakness within our core too. So I'll jump into a lot of the stretching techniques. Any stretches for back before a round from Kelly? Did you get the text? Oh, okay. So stretching with back. Actually, let's just jump right in. So the agenda that I have for today is really just stretching some core, tempo, and speed drills. Then once I get through that segment, we'll kind of just go into everything. Full swing irons, full swing driver, some chipping, pitching, and then putting techniques too. So again, keep the comments and everything flowing. I want to keep this as interactive as possible. I also want to thank MJ. He's actually letting me use his gym in his studio for today here in Danbury. So it's awesome. Wanted to give him a shout out. So let's jump right in. Let me answer Kelly's questions. Any stretches for back before a round? I like rotational drills. So first off, let's just get right into golf posture and what that looks like. So a couple ways to have proper golf posture to help with your back. Take your club underneath your nose, touching your chin, touching your chest, and kind of just bow forward. Slight knee bend with that. Hopefully you guys can all see that. Or you can also take the club here, have it on your back, and bow forward this way. So number one, get into that golf posture, right? And then let's just do some rotational drills. These help to warm up your back. Next, still staying with the rotational drills, is kind of kneeling, taking your club, and rotate that way. What I see a lot with amateurs and players, they don't really have the separation between their upper and lower body, so drills like this will help kind of work that back. Let's flip over to the other side. Hopefully you guys are doing this at home with me. What other questions here? Awesome, okay. So let's get right into some core. So traditionally for golfers, like sit-ups and anything that's really only working just that lower part of the abs isn't ideal. I like to stick with things that work the entire core, including that back, like that question I had earlier. So if you can't do this one too, there's always modifications, so let me know. I like one arm, one leg, opposite, and then this also works on dynamic balance. Good one here. Do it one more time. Okay. And like I said, so sit-ups and everything aren't ideal when it comes to golfers, so I would go more like a Russian twist. So if anyone doesn't know this one, it's just simply like this. Make it a little harder. I know you guys are all Marines and Army vets. Raise your legs. Do it that way. Question. You mentioned separation between upper and lower body. Can you explain? So in our swing, That's a really good question that came in. So what I see a lot is sometimes we all move together. It's all one movement. Hopefully you see that. Compared to watch my lower body staying stable, and it's really just my upper body turning. Hopefully that answered your question there. Also with core, you can do some side dips. I'm gonna get out of breath here, guys. So again, working the entire core, some side dips like this, make it a little harder. Raise one leg and flip it to the other side. Plank is always good too for overall core and stability. Any other questions? Good, okay. So let's talk tempo drills and how we can kind of transition now from the golf exercises into just tempo and getting that rhythm and feel before we go play. One of my favorite tempo drills would be a step drill. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but I'll start without the ball first. Start with the club in the middle of your stance, come back, raise the club, swing all the way through. Do that again. Here, you see how the body is in constant motion. That's a step drill, one of my favorites. Also with tempo, I don't know about you guys, but I've always played my best rounds when I actually have a song stuck in my head. I've heard that from tour players too. I tend to speak and do everything a little fast, so I have to make sure that my songs are slow and kind of can match that tempo of what I need. There. Okay, let's talk speed. So I want to clarify before we talk about speed. You can't swing the club hard unless you're in balance. You can swing as hard as you want as long as you are in balance and rock solid at the end of your swing. So what do I mean by that? So even without a club, this is a good one. If we actually just put our body in this position, that finished position, and I'll show you from this angle here, your body is facing the target. So just like in any other sport besides golf, baseball, football, it involves actually throwing or turning at a target. The same thing for golf, because what I see a lot with students, we become so ball focused, something like this, and we go and grab another ball, and we're not actually thinking or swinging at something. We need to swing at a target. So want to kind of clarify that before I go into any speed drills. So if you have a club at home and you're participating with me, let's go ahead and swing and hold our finish for at least 5 seconds. So what that looks like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll do it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another question. Does tempo play into pace of play and speed? That's a really good question. So you have about 60 seconds to hit that golf ball. I don't think it necessarily plays into pace of play because a lot of the issues I see, especially with beginners, their pace of play, excuse me, is from different areas, like leaving the cart on the other side of the green or leaving their bag over there, not grabbing multiple clubs to hit that shot, and then they have to run back and grab another club. So I would say it's more behavioral and not really your tempo, because when you have that 30, 60 seconds over the golf ball, take your time, go through your routine, and slow down your tempo. I have a bad right shoulder. I'm right-handed. Me as well. So I've actually had a couple shoulder surgeries, which is actually better for the right shoulder rather than the left, because in your golf swing, you're a little bit more tucked. You don't really need to hyperextend in any direction. The left shoulder, it's a little bit harder because you actually take most of the impact when it comes to our swing. So let me go back to speed. So like I said, balance and finishing our swing in balance is super, super important before I even go over speed. So hopefully we did all that at home. We finished our swing and we held it for 5 seconds. Now, not needing any equipment, all the drills that I have for you today are pretty much things you can find right in your home. Just take your golf club, flip it the other way, and the goal here is to hear the whoosh, but again, stay in balance, because you won't hit a good golf shot unless you're in balance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's kind of just some speed things without any equipment that we can do. Okay, so are there any other questions with just stretching, core, tempo, speed, golf fitness related before I kind of just go into overall golf drills? Just send them through or send them to my husband here. He's relaying them. Got one? Oh, okay. Okay, so I want to talk irons, and one of the questions that James sent me was just about grip. So let me grab some tees here, and what each grip does, and what that affects. So grip is so important. The reason for that, it's the only connection that we actually have to the golf club. So if that's wrong, our swing, I mean, you can't really dissect other things if our grip is incorrect. We're gonna really start with that grip. So I'm gonna harp on that a little bit. And I know Nick talked about this in his Facebook Live. Maybe this will give you a different visual when it comes to grip. So for my right-handed players, we're gonna take that left hand. I wanna see at least 2 knuckles on that left hand. And then to give you that visual like I mentioned, the tee here, I want that tee to be facing up. And then I'll take our right hand, interlock, overlap, whatever you prefer. Honestly, men usually do overlap because they have bigger hands. So I interlock here. Oop, can't really grab the tee. And then the second tee here, again, it's facing up. I'll just show you guys. See how that's a visual and a self-check? So if your grip is maybe too strong, see how that tee is going to be facing that way. It's not really facing up towards my chin, or vice versa. If it's a weaker grip, it's also going to face that way. Most of the time I see weaker grips with a lot of people, meaning I don't really see that knuckle on that left hand. Weaker grips, it's a little harder to turn that club face over. So here's a weaker grip. Do you see my rotation in the club face? Whereas if I have a little bit of stronger grip, which is what I play, what I prefer, look at the rotation difference. So hopefully you guys saw that just in the club face. I'll do it one more time. So that's kind of a weaker grip. My club face doesn't want to turn all the way. And there, it's a lot easier to turn over. Question. Just tempo play. What are the results of a weak or stronger grip? Most of the time, and a lot of amateurs, I see with a weaker grip, they're gonna lose the ball out to the right. So raise your hand, comment if you do tend to lose the ball to the right. I'd probably make your grip a little bit stronger. So kind of just like I showed, that weaker grip is gonna be harder to actually rotate the club. So if you can't rotate the club and close the face, where's that ball gonna go? The ball is gonna go right at the target. How has yoga helped your golf game? That's a really good question. I actually do yoga 10 minutes every day. I don't do some very extensive routine, but 10 minutes every day kind of just gets me moving, gets my body moving, especially right now that we're in quarantine. It's helped my golf game because I actually, like I mentioned before, I've had 2 shoulder surgeries, and then I've also had surgery on my wrist. So there's a lot of wrist action and impact through with our golf game. So it's helped me tremendously just build strength in those smaller muscles. Do you have a routine for the range? So my range routine always starts with shorter clubs. I never would go to the range and pick up driver and take a really full swing, like as hard as I can hit it right off the bat. So I would do really small swings to start, and I'll get into chipping here in a little bit, but it would really kind of just be some 10-yard chips, 20, and then kind of get into some full swings. I do even like that tempo drill too, just to kind of get your body moving and get a feel for just getting the sequence going. Because it's hard to get that right off the bat, especially if you don't have a lot of time for a range routine. Other questions there? What's a good drill to get a more flat wrist at the top and avoid cupping? Good one. So in my bag of tricks here, simply you can actually just take a book, something you can do at home, grab the book like this, let the club open like a door. So it has to open and close at the target, right? Everything is target focused, not focused on the ball. But to get to the top of the swing, do you see how that book, everything's flat? See how that's a flat wrist at the top? Also, if you're wearing a glove, you want to make sure that you can see that logo. So grab a book at home, you can work on that drill. Do you recommend practicing putting first before you get into the short clubs? You can. You'll see tour players, they do all different routines. I actually like to start with putting even before I go into those shorter chipping shots, and then I'll end and go back with putting too. Anything else before I move on? Love this, keep it going. Hopefully that answered your question, Mike, with kind of that flat wrist. I'm also a big proponent of looking at the positions, because if you don't look at it and study it, it's also very hard to replicate that position. So if I'm working on getting my wrist flat at the top of the swing, I'm making sure I'm looking at it. I'm looking at my wrist, I'm looking at the club position, I'm studying exactly where my body is. So if you cup it that way, or if it's like a bowed wrist, you want to fix it and try and get that wrist flat and keep studying that position. So we're talking full swing iron. So I showed you that grip drill with the T, and then again, want to reiterate, we're swinging at a target. If we can be less focused on the ball and more focused on the target, your swings are going to be a lot better, I'm telling you. So again, just swinging at a target. Because I know a lot of golf pros out there, even the ones that are on here, they don't like the phrase, keep your head down. Can't stand that golf phrase, because there's actually tour players that their head actually moves and follows the ball with their eye. Because again, we're not swinging at the ball, we're swinging at a target. So it's really, I care about what your body is doing and that motion. That's why I'm big on the golf fitness as well, so it can help our overall game. Where was... So to kind of reiterate everything with the target, and I think Nick talked about this before, just with the face, right? So simply put, if the face is turned to the left of the target, the ball is going to go to the left. If it's facing right of the target, the ball is going to go to the right. So the more we can actually think about face recognition too, the better your game is going to be. And where is that in relationship to the target? So we want to make sure we're opening and closing at the target, just with full swing. So a really good full swing drill, this one's also one of my favorites along with the step drill, is, again, no equipment. Everything that I have here you guys can do at home or on the golf range when we do get back out there. So I have a ball marker. You can use a tee too if that's easier. I want to put the ball marker right in front of the golf ball, because when we actually swing, our low point is in front of the golf ball, not behind. So we want to actually try and make that tee or that ball marker disappear here. So let me take a practice swing. So ball, and then that tee will disappear. Try that one. That one will absolutely help your ball contact when we do get back out on the range. Good advice with target swinging. How about some more advanced shots where you put draw or fade on it? Ooh, we're getting advanced here. I'd love to talk like that. Okay, so how do you hit the ball to the left? How do you hit it to the right? So basically the question is, how do you shot shape? I recommend trying to hit the ball straight before we really get fancy into this, but I will talk about it. So I'll start with losing the ball to the right, because a lot of people I see, we lose the ball to the right. So why? Why does that happen? I'll help you guys right here down the line. So if you see, and I'm going to try and exaggerate the positions just so you can see it. When we lose the ball out to the right, like a fade or a slice, it's because when we come through, we're swinging in. So I hope you guys saw that here. We're coming this way, we're swinging in. So we're cutting across the ball. So what that's going to do, it's going to put spin on the ball and it's going to go to the right, right? So you can't really see it here. I'm not out on the range, but it's cutting across the ball this way. So to hit it like a draw or a hook or something to go to the left, guess what? It's actually the complete opposite, right? So if we swing in and it's going to make the ball go to the right, we have to swing out to make the ball go to the left, simply put. So what that looks like, that's again why a lot of people will lose the ball to the right, because it's simply harder to make the ball start out on target line or start out to the right and come back into the left. So it looks more like this, in, and then we have to push out in order to make the ball go to the left, create a draw. Okay, I'll exaggerate again. So it's more like a figure eight. That's how it's shot shaping 101, you could say. That was a really good question. Was that from James? That was a good one. Very, very in-depth, but I try to keep it as simple as possible because this game is hard enough, so. A great idea, straight. Wish I could hit it straight. Good, good comment, Artie. So, kind of since we've already talked a little bit about shot shape, we need to really learn how to hit the ball, usually left in most players, I will say, to hit the ball straight, and it is a lot harder. So number one, I would say check that grip. Is your grip a little too weak? Because then it's definitely not going to start out straight or go to the left. And then next, you're probably swinging in a little bit to make that spin go out to the right. So check that grip, right? And then we want to try and swing out. So you have to drop in and swing out. Anything else? Got any other questions? I'll move on. Awesome. Love this. Okay, so showed you guys that T drill. Just to recap a little bit, again, to keep it as simple as possible, check that grip with your T. What are you swinging at? Let's get away from being ball focused and more target focused. Have that face recognition. Swinging at the target, let the club open and close. And then one of my favorite drills is kind of putting that T ball marker and something in front of the ball and try and make that disappear. Does that, William Hayes, does that apply for right or left-handed? That's for right-handed players, so it would be the opposite for my lefties. I apologize, but it would be the complete opposite. So if I'm swinging in to the left as a right-handed player, usually if you lose it out to the right as a left-handed player, you're swinging in to the right. What's the good word on the size and thickness of the grip itself? Good question. Love these questions. Depends on your hand size, honestly. That's why you should see your teaching pro or professional when it comes to choosing grips, just to kind of check and see how big your hands are. And a lot of that is preference too. So when it comes to club fitting itself, a lot of it is numbers, but also preference. Okay. You want to talk driver? Let's go into driver. I have the new Maverick for this year. Haven't been able to use it much yet. I'm just going to move the camera on my tripod over a little bit so you guys can see this. That's a better setup. Got some foam balls. Okay, so driver. Does anybody know the difference between a driver swing and an iron swing? And did you guys know that they are pretty much two different swings? So, I'll start with explaining that first. Okay, this ball. Because there's a lot of differences with these two clubs. Just to go over it, with an iron, we're hitting down on the ball, right? It's a lot heavier of a club and it's shorter, just to start, just to name a few. But one of the biggest differences is what's going on at the top of our swing. Swing plane 101. So with an iron, our setup is, put this down for a sec, is here, right? And then at the top of our swing, it's kind of facing right on that target line. I like to think of that butt end of the club on the target line. Let me know if you guys don't understand what the target line is. I'll explain that. So that's an iron, and then driver. We're standing a lot further away from the golf ball. We're reaching, we have a way wider, bigger stance, and we're bending our knees. And there's one other really important tip with setup of driver that I'm gonna explain that I like to see, and you see in a lot of better players. So again, here's a huge difference of these two clubs right off the bat. And then one, you're also playing off the inside of your left heel. Irons, we usually don't play up that far unless it's a long iron. So I'm gonna bring this to the top of the swing so you can see it. That's where we'd swing with an iron. That's where we're gonna swing with a driver. So I hope that one might be a little eye-opening for you guys. This is steeper. This is flatter. So flatter with driver, if you guys have played baseball, softball, any of that growing up, it's more like a baseball swing. I want you to think of it like a baseball swing. It's really around your body. So doing drills, even just swinging around your body like this, are really gonna help flatten out your golf swing. So again, if I did that here, look at that position that it puts me at the top of my swing with driver. Nice and flat. So I see this a lot. That's an iron. This is a driver. So I wanted to explain the difference between an iron and a driver. But let me go back to that setup I was talking about that's really important with driver. I know Lucas is watching, so shout out to Lucas. We're going to talk about the ABCs with driver here. So if you do this setup with your driver, you're guaranteed to hit it a little bit better. And you have a solid foundation and a solid setup every single time. So if you start with your feet together, this is going to be A. I like to flare that left foot a little bit, so it's going to be off the inside of my left heel. A big stance, so that's B. And then the last step with driver is kind of tilting. Why do you think we want to tilt? We want to actually swing up on the ball compared to an iron where we swing down on it. So let me do that again. A, B, really big stance, bend your knees. And then lastly, tilt a little bit. Do you see how it sets me up to hit this, hopefully crush this drive? So that's kind of the ABCs of driver. To keep everything very simple, and then we just want to swing up on the ball. Always hold your finish for at least 5 seconds. That's what I love. Another question? Is the driver tip the same for the fairway drivers? So, no. Why do you think that is? Does anyone have that answer? It's because it's sitting on the ground. It's an iron, so we still need to hit down on the ball anytime the ball is on the ground. So driver is the only swing there that's totally different. I will say with a fairway wood, it is a little bit flatter at the top of your swing. Again, going into, this is steep, right? And then this is flat. So fairway wood is going to be a little bit in between that. Any other questions on here? Different arcs. Did you have a question already about different arcs? I know you joked before about hitting it straight, and I talked kind of swing plane 101 there. Let me know, write it in the comments. So that's my biggest thing with driver. So realize that they are two different swings. One you hit up on the ball, one you hit down. One's a lot lighter, it's a lot longer. Your setup is totally different. Okay, let's go into some chipping. I have another acronym with chipping too, so hopefully you guys enjoy. Bring this a little bit closer. Okay, so I think Brian was talking on your last Facebook Live or one of your Facebook Lives just with the similarities with putting, so I do want to reiterate that a little bit. So if you see this setup here, what's the only part of my body that's moving? It's really just my shoulders, right? So that's just like a chip shot. We're really just isolating our shoulders. A huge difference is I like to keep my hips open, and you'll see better players with their hips open. The reason for that is it's a lot easier to get our hips through. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into pitching, which will be next. So again, just kind of moving our shoulders just like a putting stroke. Also a huge difference with pitching and chipping. Chipping, you want to keep the ball on the ground as long as possible. Your ground is your best friend. Pitching, if you have to carry something, if you have to carry a bunker, if you have to carry some heavy rough or heavy grass, that's when you should pitch. So really the acronym I like to go by, putt. So if you're debating putting out there, like, I'm really close to the green, I think I should putt this, do it. Absolutely putt. Next would be chip. Chip when you don't want to putt or it's a little bit too long, and then pitch if you have to, those really high lofted shots. So bump and runs, use the ground, best friend. What do you mean get your hips through? Really, really good. So if I were to do a slow motion swing, and I'm gonna do this from both angles so you guys can see me here, you'll see, really, really slow, the first part of your body that should move as you come down in your transition is your hips. So here, hips, 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 all the way through to the finish. So I like to preset my hips when it comes to chipping, and I favor it in pitch shots as well, because it's kind of like cheating. Your hips are already set there, so you don't have to move them, because we have to get our hips out of the way when it comes to a full swing. So here, see how it's already preset. Let me do that slow motion swing from this angle. Maybe you guys will see it a little bit better. Here, top of the swing. First thing to move from the top of the swing is our lower body. See that? Not really doing that much with my hands, just lower body is moving first. So I'll talk a little bit more about hips when we get into some pitch shots too. Another question? Love it, keep them rolling in. When teeing off with an iron on a par 3, do you recommend using a tee? I seem to lose some difference off the tee when I do. I personally like to use a tee, just because if you have the option, why not? Because you don't really want to hit it as, you don't have to hit it as fat. You can hit it fat if you really don't use a tee. But again, that could be preference too. If you feel like not using a tee, go ahead. Just make sure that our contact is really solid and our divot is in front of the ball when we do that. Good? Okay. Wait, driver swing. Your question was, what's the difference? And you showed the difference, iron step. Okay. Okay, cool. So hopefully that answered your question with moving your hips through. So the acronym I wanted to tell you guys about with chipping was BLT with chips. You guys like BLTs? So I do bacon, lettuce, tomato with chips. So this is kind of an easy way to remember it when you are out on the golf course. So we want to play the ball in the back of our stance, right? And again, I like to kind of favor opening up my hips, makes it easier to get through the ball. We're going to lean, L, lean towards the target, right? Play back in our stance, lean towards the target. And then the last acronym of that is time. So if we're doing a 10-yard chip, we want to think of it like a clock. So it's going to be 7 to 5. That's going to hopefully go 10 yards, depending on green speed. and so forth. If you go a little bit higher, the 8 to 4, that should hopefully go about 20 yards. So BLT with chips. Play the ball in the back of your stance, lean towards the target, and then think of that clock in terms of distance. Anything else? Okay, and a good drill too with chipping that you guys can do at home. I don't currently have any towels here, but you can always put towels and try and hit that towel in one bounce or a hula hoop to see if we're getting our landing zones correctly. Let's go into pitching, unless there's more questions with chipping here. Okay, so definitely going to talk about hips here. So the chip shot is keeping that low bump and run type shot using the green as much as you can. And then when it comes to chipping, our stance becomes a little bit more neutral. I still like to favor that front side, that flaring a little bit, and favor my weight a little some, 55, 60% maybe. And then now, the swing's bigger. That's really the only difference. So if I'm swinging here like a half swing, now my hips just get involved. So from here, my hips have to move out of the way. So here, hips gotta move out of the way. Again, this goes into, there's a question earlier about just how I warm up and get ready. This has a lot to do with it because I want my contact to be crisp before I go out and play or go play in a tournament. And then it's also just getting my hips and sequencing in the right way. Because if I'm pitching, if this is a putting stroke, right? Putting stroke, then a chip shot, and then we're gonna go into a pitch shot with my hips, and then what's next? Full swing, and you really wanna get your hips out of the way and moving. That's awesome with the clock. Would you explain a little more about the relationship to distance with a few more variations? Cool. So if the clock analogy doesn't work for you, I also use kind of parts of my body that help too. So, and this you'll have to test out on the range if you have a rangefinder to kind of test those distances when you're working on these distance wedges. So I know for me about a 50-yard shot is going to be waist high or above the waist, to the same thing on the other side, waist high, a little bit above the waist. And it might be different for you, so again, you'll have to check that. And then a 3/4 swing, depending on what club I have. This should go about like 80 yards to here, 80 yards. So that's another way besides that clock analogy that you can test and see how far your clubs go. And I would do that throughout the bag too with kind of every club to get your gapping and get everything correct. Any other questions with pitching, chipping? I can go into putting. Good, nothing else coming in? Actually, I'm looking at my bag of tricks over here, and does anybody know how tight our grip pressure should be before I go into the putter? With grip pressure, because we talked a lot about our grip. On a scale of 1 to 10, the pressure of what we hold our club at should be about a 2 or 3. Naturally, it will get a little bit tighter as we go. So it starts off really, really loose, like holding the baby bird. And then as we come through, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, again, your pressure will get a little bit tighter as you come through. But, again, something you guys can practice at home, I brought some tortilla chips. So, what I see a lot with my students is they hold that tension and that pressure, especially when we get nervous and we're playing in a tournament, through our hands, through our wrists, through our forearms, and definitely in our jaw. So, if you have a potato chip, we don't want to break it. So we want to create, make sure that tension is nice and loose in our jaw as we swing. Really salty. Mentioned gapping. So you mentioned gapping by your whole bag. Can you explain? Yeah, absolutely. So Really salty chips, hang on. To really know your distances, again, use a rangefinder or use a range that has distance markers so you can test this. So this is my 58-degree sand wedge, so I would start with this and maybe do some knee-high to knee-high chips just to see how far that goes. And then also going into waist to waist, see how far that goes. And then what's a 3/4 and a full swing? 58-degree or sand wedge for you guys, how far does that go? And then do that same process throughout your entire bag and write it down. So that's how you see how far you're actually hitting your shots in total. Not carry distance, in total. More questions here. For chipping, what's a good reminder knowing what club to use? Good question. So I favor using the green. So use the green as much as possible. If the pin is a lot further away and you have a lot of green to work with, maybe that's using like an 8 or a 9 iron, so it's gonna go a little bit further. Maybe even a 7 iron. I know a lot of women also use hybrid as well. Off the green, they like to use that hybrid to kind of just get it started and get it rolling. If the pin's a lot closer, you can still do the same bump and run technique with a sand wedge, with a pitching wedge, 9 iron. So don't fall in love with one club. Assess what the actual shot is calling for, and then you choose your club selection. That's why chipping is usually the option. So putt, and then chip if you can't putt or if it's a little bit too far, and pitch if you have to. I only really like to do that fancy fly shot or flop shot when you have to go over a bunker or over heavy grass or something like that. What are some tips for help with mental preparation and performance? Really good. I don't know if you guys listen to music, but music's a huge thing for me. I want to always make sure that my music is slow and it keeps my tempo in check. Again, I'm very fast. It's kind of just my personality. So I need to make sure that I can bring it down a notch. But I also want you to stay true to your golf personality as well. So if you are a faster person, just know that, know your tendencies. That's a tip, mental preparation for me. Kind of going back into yoga and meditation. Meditation has been very helpful with me. And again, it's not a huge part of your day. I do yoga for 10 minutes every day, and usually I'll do a couple breathing exercises with meditation as well. Any other questions there? Cool. Let's go into putting, since I talked about the tension drill with the potato chip. So, putting, and Brian talked about this in your last live, and I'm just gonna reiterate a little bit because this information is very important, but it's all about isolating those shoulders. So you don't even have to use a club, you can actually put the club down. And this goes back a little bit into that separation with upper and lower body too. So it's just moving our shoulders, right? We wanna make sure our hips aren't moving, our head's not moving. It's a very robotic motion when it comes to putting. So isolate those shoulders. If you have, I don't know if they have one, if he has one here in the gym, but if you have a ball, you can kind of put right in between your arms to hopefully isolate those shoulders even further, give you actual physical feedback with that. What I see a lot with putting is our backswings are too long. So if we're working on a 3-foot putt, I want your backswing to not be so long. My putter is a little bit bigger here, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit more space, but we shouldn't really be hitting that. So what I see a lot is the backswing becomes way too big, and then we decelerate as we come through. So that can cause a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to our putting stroke. So that's a really, really good one. And then going back into just equipment and things that we have at home that you can use. Grab 2 books. So it's kind of just a makeshift gate drill. Put that ball in the middle, use a bottle, use a beer, whatever you're drinking at home. And create that gate drill with making sure our backswing isn't too long. To take this drill up a notch, and again, still making it quarantine friendly, add a playing card. So I have a king of hearts. Let's add it to 3 feet. And it's a very difficult drill. I have some foam balls at the moment. But the goal is to have it stop and stay on that king of hearts. So this is also now working on distance control. It's really, really difficult to have that stay on that king of hearts, but that's a really great practice one. What drill do you recommend for someone who tends to get on their toes during the downswing? That one's coming from one of my friends, Dan Powers. He knows that I personally am working on this in my golf swing. Right now, it's always a work in progress. So when it comes to getting on your toes a little bit, because he knows I do this, I tend to get stuck a little bit back here in my transition. So you can do a couple things. You can actually have a hip trainer. I have a hip trainer at home, so it will help to get my hands moving out of the way first and not stuck necessarily. Or you can always do, let me bring the tripod over a little bit closer to the wall. You can have your butt on the wall. And then make sure your glutes are completely touching it the entire time. So as we transition, just make sure that we're still touching the wall as we come through. So thanks, Dan. Thanks for that one. He knows I'm working on that, like I said. And then to end on the last putting game or drill, also one of my favorites. So when it comes to the step drill, I really like. What was that T drill with your irons when you put it in front? It really promotes solid contact. And then lastly, last favorite putting drill would be this one here. So I want to start you at 3 feet. And then I'll put another ball, I like to say like 5 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet. You can have 4 or 5 balls. And this is a fun game that you can play with like your playing partners or just a drill by yourself out on the golf course too. So if the hole is, I'll use this tee as my hole for now. And you can use the flag step, you can use another club. Put it at least 3 feet behind the hole. The goal with this putting drill is we don't want to be short of the hole because we always want to make sure we get the ball to the hole. But we also don't want to leave ourselves too far where that putt coming back is difficult to make. So we want to be in the safety zone here. So the goal is to, and if you make it great, but let's make sure we keep it in that safety zone so we're not 3-putting as often. So let's, I hit the stick. So I can't move on to the next ball if I hit that stick. So I gotta go here. So hit the tee, so let's fade that one, and then I'll go back to this next one. Make sure you guys can see me. There, keep it in that safety zone, and so forth. If you miss, you have to start over and go back to that 3-footer. Those are really the most important ones anyway that we should be making. So, thank you guys. If you have any other questions, send them in now. This was really fun. Again, I wanted to thank MJ for letting me use this space in his gym today. I was really pumped to show you guys the golf fitness exercises in the beginning, just to kind of get our body moving, get us in that mindset of playing golf again, because we will very soon. And for any other content, my social media platforms are at Molloy Methods. So I show a lot of free tips and everything there on Facebook, Instagram, and some videos on YouTube too. But thank you guys. I had a really good time. So hopefully I helped you out. A lot of tips to digest in that entire segment, but great job. Thanks, Artie. Maybe I'll see you guys again in the Sunday hangout. But it was great. Thanks again, guys. Bye. I don't know how. Hang on, I gotta try and save it. I don't know how.